Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Job Picks. The other half of the show, the parlay, joining me in to break down some UFC Vegas 82. Let's get into it. Off the big UFC 295. We're back at the Apex for a card headlined by Brendan Allen and Paul Craig. We got 13 fights to break down. We had 14, dropped one of them this morning. Maybe we'll get a replacement there for Christian Leroy Duncan, Cesar Almeida pulling out. But we got 13 fights to break down. What do you think of the card overall?
Yeah, overall, not a lot of star power, but if you look at some of these prospects and some of these fighters, we got a lot of finishing ability. We got some young, exciting guys we haven't seen in a while who've been on tears like Jonathan Pearce. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. That fight with Cesar Almeida dropping off, I was super stoked for that one, but there's still some good spots on this card.
Yeah, it's not the highest level of a card for a lot of these fights. A lot of guys that have a couple fights in the UFC or maybe a couple of guys on their way out or towards the end of their contract. But either way, some of these spots are some of the best to take advantage of because a lot of these lines are maybe steamed one way and they shouldn't be, or you get some value on a favorite. But we're going to go through, give you our predictions, give you a breakdown on every single fight. But if you want our bets, you can jump in the double leg premium. Link is in the description for that. And that gets you every single UFC card every week for less than $1 a day. If you just want the plays for this week, they'll be available on Friday. You get the instant download, then stay up to date at the double leg on Instagram for that when it drops. Without any further ado, we got 13 fights. Don't want to waste any of your time. So let's jump into it with the main event. Paul Craig coming in as a plus 260 dog against Brendan Allen, sitting at minus 360, over under 1.5 rounds, minus 110 for the over, minus 120 for the under. Brendan Allen been on quite the tear. 5-0 in his last 5. He's looked pretty dang good doing so. We got Paul Craig coming off his middleweight debut where he got a dub against Andre Muniz, and looks like he could be something here at middleweight. He was a light heavyweight for a long time, moves down to middleweight, comes in as a dog against Andre Muniz, TKOs him in the second round. At 35 years of age, maybe a little bit of a resurgence for him here at the middleweight division. He's getting a main event slot here, a main event slot for Brendan Allen. He had one in not his last fight, but the fight before that against Andre Muniz was a last-second main event where the real main event fell out. He gets pushed up to the main event. But this is one where he'll get his face on the poster, and rightfully so because he's been on quite the tear. Last time out, subbing Bruno Silva in the first round, and then another sub against Muniz and another sub against Krzysztof Jotko. So 3 straight submission wins, 2 in the first round, 1 in the third. What do you think about this fight? I mean, it's kind of both guys love to take it to the ground. Brendan Allen does have some great striking on the feet as well. Paul Craig, we all know the stuff he can bring on the ground. He has you trapped in one spot. You're probably not getting out of it. It's dangerous. You don't want to go in that guard. That Paul Craig guard, it's not a place you want to be. But Brendan Allen, a wizard on the ground as well. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I'm going to start out by saying I think Brendan Allen wins this fight. I think he should win this fight, but the line is so wide to have Paul Craig this big of an underdog after some of the stuff he's done in the UFC, some of the guys he's beat, and some of the finishes he's pulled off. Like, this guy's dangerous, obviously, on the ground. Got the TKO in his last fight just because, he got to mount. Andre Muniz was defending the submissions, and Paul Craig just rained down the shots, but Paul Craig dropping down from 205 looked really damn good. He looked good on the scales. He looked in shape. Gas tank seemed maybe a tad better. He hung on the feet a little bit longer. So I'm interested to see how he does against the guy who is a better striker than Muniz and Brendan Allen, a guy who's got a great ground game as well. I feel like this is Andre Muniz just a little bit better in all aspects when he's facing Brendan Allen here. I think Allen should win this fight, but something tells me that, if Allen does go down to the ground with Paul Craig, Craig's going to be the stronger fighter down there. He submitted Jamal Hill, Nikita Krylov, TKO against Jamal Hill after he broke his arm, but he had him in the submission. This guy has pulled off submissions from angles, and he's fast with it. Like he's up and he's got you in a triangle before you can even blink when you're on the ground and his guard. So it's like, do I take the gamble and do I take the dog here? Because, one reason I don't want to is Brendan Allen's 27 years old. He's like just entering his prime right now, and he's on this win streak. 5 wins. His last 3 are by submission. That's pretty damn good, especially at this level. He's submitting Andre Muniz, which he was a big underdog against, submitted Bruno Silva, Krzysztof Jotko. So that would worry me a little bit taking the dog shot here. If these guys were closer in age, same points in their career, I might think about it. But for the pick, I'm going to take Brendan Allen. Probably not betting on Brendan Allen, though, just because of all the unknowns. But I'll be watching for that dog to cash. Not sure if I'm going to lay anything on it yet, though.
Yeah, I like Brendan Allen in this spot. I mean, he's only 27, but he's got 12 UFC fights, so he's got a lot of UFC experience. I always like to take Paul Craig at plus money just because he's got that ability to finish the fight whenever you're on the ground or whenever you're not really expecting it. But in this one, I think Brendan Allen is smart enough in the positions on the ground to where he's not going to allow any of that. And on the feet, I honestly think he could find a TKO because Paul Craig really doesn't offer much on the feet. And even, in his fight against Muniz, who isn't a great striker, Muniz isn't some great striking fighter. He didn't really show anything in that one. Moving down to middleweight, you might be a little bit bigger than guys. You might be a little bit more confident in your stand-up. I didn't really see much of that. Really just came down to Paul Craig getting on top and Muniz just kind of wilting to the pressure. So Paul Craig, 35 years old, always dangerous. But I do think Brendan Allen can just go in here and use his kicks. He's got great kicks. He's got great hands too. I think if he just keeps it on the feet, I think he could piece him up. So I think Brendan Allen, I'm going to be eyeing that TKO prop because, he's been winning a lot of his fights by submission. Maybe you get some value on the TKO prop. I think he could knock him down and maybe TKO him on the ground. As long as he doesn't, knock him down and then jump in his guard and then think he's safe, then I like it. Maybe, stay in side control or make him get back up because we've seen it in a lot of fights like Paul Craig against Volkan Oezdemir. Anytime that Paul Craig would fall to his back and want to get Volkan into his guard, Volkan would just, stand him up and stay safe that way. So if he plays it that way, I think he beats him pretty easily. And I think, I don't really love the line on Brendan Allen, but I can see why it's that way. So I'll probably, take a by TKO prop. I'm guessing. I want to see what the line is on that, of course, before I play it. But it's probably the way I'll look at this one. I think Brendan Allen gets it done. Got anything else?
Yeah, I think my last thing too with Paul Craig, another concern is, he's going to want fights on the ground. But at this level against guys like Brendan Allen, I don't know if he has the offensive wrestling to get the fight to the ground when he wants. Like he lands takedowns, but they're unorthodox. He's not, a skilled wrestler. He's a really good grappler. But to be able to get Brendan Allen to the ground when he wants and maintain dominant position seems like kind of a stretch. I think if Paul Craig does pull this off, it's probably off his back. I don't think he's getting on top of Brendan Allen at any point in this fight.
Yeah, and the real reason that I say Brendan Allen could TKO him because he's not really getting a ton of these, TKOs. But the way that he was able to stand with Bruno Silva and even knock him down, I'm like, all right, he's shown me enough there that I can be confident in him on the feet to piece up Paul Craig here. So he'll be the pick for me. Co-main event, Michael Morales coming in at minus 260 against Jake Matthews, sitting at plus 210. Over under 1.5 rounds, minus 185 for the over, plus 155 or the under. Jake Matthews, 3-2 in his last 5, going up against the undefeated Michael Morales, sitting at 24 years old. It's been a great prospect to look out for, getting a seasoned vet here in Jake Matthews, only at 29 years of age. But this is going to be his 19th UFC fight, so a lot of experience for Jake Matthews. Been around for a long time. He's kind of been up and down throughout the years. He's 2-2 in his last 4. Losses coming to Sean Brady and Matthew Semmelsberger, and knockout against Andre Filio and a submission win his last time out against Darius Flowers. So I mean, Jake Matthews is always kind of a wild card. You never really know what Jake Matthews is going to show up. I mean, people were really high on him against Matthew Semmelsberger. He goes out there, gets dropped numerous times, and then his last time out against Darius Flowers, short notice opponent, big favorite in that one, and he gets it done. But there was, some cause for concern against Darius Flowers, who throws heat, and it looked a little shady at the beginning there. Jake Matthews takes over, gets the submission win on the ground. So Michael Morales, he's coming off a really nice performance against Max Griffin. It was a decision win, but he kind of took over and started to beat him up towards the end of the fight. He's had 3 UFC fights, 2 of them by finish, and he's coming into this one hopefully looking to get another one. I got to say, this line's a little steep for me because Jake Matthews been around for a long time. Michael Morales still young in his career. We haven't seen him, against that great a competition. Adam Fugit, Trevin Giles, Max Griffin. Max Griffin's a seasoned vet, but more towards the end of his career. It's an interesting fight. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I was telling you before this, like Michael Morales could be the parlay buster of the week. And, the line probably, rightfully, it's probably in the right area, I think. But at the same time, I watched Michael Morales fight. He fights like a 24-year-old. He does some really good things. He's really skilled, but there's some times where he does get hit. And there's some times, he gets caught with his chin up in the air, or he's backing up trying to fight off his back foot. Against Adam Fugit, there was some times where Fugit had a lot of success on the feet. There was some times where he was able to take him down and do some decent work on top. Ultimately, Morales finished that fight in the 3rd, but it was actually a pretty interesting fight up until that point. With Jake Matthews, you said it perfectly. The dude's a wild card. Like, he could come out there and lose to, let's say, Matthew Semmelsberger, and then come out here and just, absolutely flatline a dude in his next fight. You never really know what you're getting with him. But I do think he's well-rounded enough to hang into this fight throughout the first few rounds at least, see who gets tired first. And if it's Michael Morales, then I think Jake Matthews has a good chance to make this fight at least close. Morales, 24 years old, man. That's at some point he's going to run into a test. I'm not saying he's going to take a loss this fight or his next fight, but the guy still is somewhat inexperienced at the UFC level. What I think for Jake Matthews, if he wants to win this fight, I think he's got to put the pressure on him. He's got to make him fight going backwards, and you got to get him out of his element. Michael Morales does a good job of fighting really calm and composed. Like, he doesn't have a lot of movements. He's a good counter puncher. He's quick and he hits hard, but he's not really overly aggressive at any point. I think if Jake Matthews gets in his face, tries to rip the body and put the pressure on him, back him up to the fence, I think you try to get Michael Morales out of his game plan. You try to get him swinging a little more wild, and hopefully he gets tired, and that's how you get your win there. But at the same time, Jake Matthews has been dropped quite a few times, and if Michael Morales connects at any point, he could put him out as well. So for my pick, I'm going to take Morales. From a betting standpoint, though, I'll be keeping an eye on Jake Matthews. I'll look like an absolute idiot if he goes out there and gets knocked out in the first round, but there's a world I think Jake Matthews makes this one close.
Yeah, I like Michael Morales. He's got a really nice frame for a welterweight, 6 foot, but he's got a 79-inch reach. He's long, he's strong, he's built, and he's got a really nice jab. We saw it in the Max Griffin fight. Like, the way he was jabbing Max Griffin, they weren't normal jabs. Like, he was throwing that out there and snapping the head back pretty hard. So if he can fight behind that, I think he's got a good chance to win this one. Jake Matthews does have some good counters, and he can throw in combination pretty well to the body, to the head. So if Jake Matthews can get in some type of groove early, then I think it's a different fight. But if Michael Morales comes out and fights his fight and doesn't really have to stray away from that, I think Michael Morales probably cruises to a win. Maybe he gets a knockout, but yeah, this lines is just a little tough. I mean, we're getting these a lot. Seems like nowadays it's like, you think the guy's going to win, but the line just seems a little bit too wide, and you're kind of forced to pick. Are you going to throw him in a parlay or what? And then you're looking at a parlay buster. But yeah, Morales will be the pick for me. Don't love the line though. A lightweight bout, Jordan Leavitt coming in at plus 185 against Chase Hooper. Sitting at minus 205, over under 2.5 rounds, minus 150 for the over, plus 120 for the under. Chase Hooper, 24 years of age. He's been around for a while, though. 6'1", quite the frame there for lightweight. He moved up to lightweight, and it looks like it's probably the right decision for him. Jordan Leavitt, 3-2 in his last 5, 28 years of age for him. And I'm a big fan of Jordan Leavitt. I love the guy. His persona is just funny to watch. And the way that he got the knockout his last time out against Victor Martinez was just hilarious because, you don't see Jordan Leavitt as like some big knockout artist, but he got that knee to the head, finished him off with the punches to secure a TKO victory, which was pretty insane to watch. I believe we were both on him against Victor Martinez as a slight dog. So that was a good win for him. He's coming in here as a dog against Chase Hooper, who, like I said, has been around for a while, even though he's only 24 years of age. 7 UFC fights. This will be his 8th, coming off a great win against Nick Fiore, where he looked pretty dang good. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, I actually think it's a pretty close fight. If Jordan Leavitt doesn't have to fight Paddy Pimblett in his second to last fight, the dude's on a 3-fight win streak with 1 TKO or 1 KO and 1 submission. The guy's a good wrestler. I think he averages over 2.31 takedowns per fight. On the ground, he likes to look for submissions. He puts himself in good position on the ground. Striking's got some work to do. Yeah, he got the TKO in his last fight by those knees, but you can just tell like he's still developing as far as his striking goes. For Chase Hooper, though, I feel like we're just waiting. He has so many fights in the UFC, and he's been like, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss for a while now. I think we're just waiting for him to break out if he does break out. He's kind of putting the striking, he's trying to put the striking together, but there's still so many liabilities. The reason I do kind of like him in this fight is that he's not having to worry about a good striker across from him. He's not having to worry about these Steve Garcias here who hit really hard, or even Steven Peterson, who's been around forever, has a ton of experience, and who's pretty good on the feet, or Alex Caceres. Like, those are his 3 losses in the UFC. All 3 of those guys, good strikers above his level, and that's what he struggled with. Chase Hooper has a weird way of getting fights to the ground, and when he's on top or even on bottom, he's so long. Like, he uses his limbs really well to either take your back, to look for these crazy submission arm bars, triangles, and a lot of times, he's able to at least get it. And if he doesn't, he puts himself in mount or on top, and he's winning rounds, or he's raining down ground and pound. With Jordan Leavitt, though, I think he's stronger than Chase Hooper. I think if someone's taking anybody to the ground, it's probably Jordan Leavitt finding the takedowns on Hooper. And from there, he's just got to stay safe. If he can stay safe, I think this is a close fight, probably going to decision. If someone's getting finished here, I see it being Chase Hooper by winning by submission. And, Jordan Leavitt making some kind of mistake, giving up his back, and Chase Hooper just working until he finds a sub. For the pick, I'm actually going to go Jordan Leavitt here. I like the strength. I like the fact that he's probably going to be the one wrestling, and, on the feet, it's probably a wash. Like, I don't see either one of these guys separating themselves on the feet. Hooper might throw more volume. He might, he's longer, obviously, but he doesn't have a bunch of sting on his shots. He gets wild. When he does get hit, he doesn't respond that well. So, at this price, I'm probably going to take a shot on the dog here on Jordan Leavitt.
Yeah, I mean, Chase Hooper, in his last 6 UFC fights, he's been win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. So if you're going based off of that, you should lose this fight. But I don't know. I mean, it's a wide line for me. I don't know that I would bet Chase Hooper at minus, 200 plus, because I do think, like you said, Jordan Leavitt could come in here and wrestle him. He is strong on the ground, and I don't know. I'm just interested to see how he handles the length of Chase Hooper, because he's a long guy and he's kind of really unorthodox with a lot of the stuff he throws up. So I'm interested to see how that works with Jordan Leavitt, because he did get submitted by Paddy Pimblett. He got his arm trapped and got rear naked choke. So that could happen in this one, where he makes a mistake and Chase Hooper capitalizes. But I do think on the feet, Chase Hooper a little bit longer, and I like his striking a little bit more. I know that's pretty crazy to say, because he looked pretty bad in a lot of these striking exchanges. But I don't think Jordan Leavitt is like some crazy striker on the feet. So if Chase Hooper doesn't really have to worry about big power coming at him on the feet, I like him to, do some work on the feet with the volume. He's got a 74-inch reach. He's 6'1". And on the ground, I think he could pose some problems with that length and just throwing up some stuff that, Jordan Leavitt's probably not used to. So for the pick, I'm going to go with Chase Hooper. I don't really love the price again. And it's a lot of these where I just don't really love the price. And maybe, for a bet, you take Jordan Leavitt just based off the value. But for the pick, I'm going to go with Chase Hooper.
Think about this real quick. Jordan Leavitt beats Trey Ogden and outstrikes him 69-41 in that fight. And then Trey Ogden goes and loses, and then beats Daniel Zellhuber, who's a phenomenal striker. And that fight was on the feet the whole entire time. So there's some MMA math for you that hardly ever works out, but it's something to think about.
Bantamweight bout. Peyton Talbott coming in at minus 595 against Nick Aguirre, sitting at plus 420. Over under 1.5 rounds, minus 170 for the over, plus 140 for the under. Peyton Talbott undefeated, coming off his impressive win on the Contender Series. This will be his UFC debut. Nick Aguirre coming off his loss in his UFC debut, so this will be his second fight. And it's 4-1 in his last 5. Coming in here for Peyton Talbott, big favorite, but I do think it's fairly warranted. I mean, we always hate, betting on guys making their UFC debuts, and especially at big chalk. But in this one, I think Peyton Talbott showed enough against, Reyes Cortez, who's not UFC caliber, but I mean, he's kind of on that edge where you could see him being in the UFC. Like, being in the UFC isn't something crazy to say nowadays. We see a lot of people get into the UFC and, fight their 2 or 3 fights and then they're on the way out. So I think Reyes Cortez could probably make the UFC. I don't know if he'd stay around, but Peyton Talbott kind of put it on him in that one. Nick Aguirre fought Dan Argueta. Didn't look great in that one. He was a heavy underdog in that one too. But Peyton Talbott looks like a pretty dang good talent to come in here into the UFC and maybe make some noise. What are you thinking in this one?
Yeah, I think if Aguirre wants to win this fight, he's got to do it by submission. He's not going to sit and strike with Talbott by any means. And, to be able to submit Talbott, you got to get him down to the ground. And Reyes Cortez was a wrestler, and I think he landed 1 takedown for just a minute. And Talbott did so good at working back up to the feet. He's done it in fights on the regional scene. If he gets tripped or taken down, he's so, I don't even know if you want to call it athletic or what it is, but he's able to get back up to his feet every single time. Pretty sure he hit the backflip there on the Contender Series trying to get out of a takedown attempt. And on the feet, this dude was insane, in my opinion. One of the best strikers we saw all season. His numbers were insane. He landed 145 significant strikes against Reyes Cortez in that fight. Good numbers there. Striking-wise, obviously he's going to be the better fighter here. His takedown defense is good. His get-up game's good. Aguirre is dangerous with the submissions, but if he can't get it to the ground, I don't see him having much success at all here. And I think that's exactly why you're seeing Talbott here at a massive, massive favorite. So I'll be looking at the KO TKO prop just because Talbott landed some shots on Cortez that put most people out. I think Cortez, at the heart is a junkyard dog. At least he will not go away easily and he can take some punishment. Anybody else on the show, I think Peyton Talbott probably puts out. So I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in here, gets a big finish and, starts building his name a little bit. This is the type of fighter these UFC executives love to bring up. They love to give them fights to, showcase their skills. He's kind of got that, kind of star potential coming off the Contender Series if he can string some wins together here. So I expect him to have a big performance.
It is a pretty crazy line just because he was minus 155 against Reyes Cortez, obviously beat the brakes off him. And then Nick Aguirre doesn't look good in his UFC debut. I think on the feet, the pressure of Talbott is just something that people hate to deal with. Like, he will stay in your face, walk you down. And a lot of the shots that Peyton Talbott was hitting Reyes Cortez with, it's just like Cortez couldn't do anything about it. He just, the pressure that he puts on you just throws everything at you. Kicks, it just walk you down and throw everything. So in this one, I think Aguirre, if he doesn't take it to the ground, he's going to probably not love that pressure. He's going to wilt to that pressure. I think Peyton Talbott probably gets him out of there. I could see a second round or a third round finish, because that pressure is just insane. Like, he didn't even look tired. He landed 145 significant strikes on Cortez, and it didn't even look like he was phased at all. So I think probably a late finish is probably something I'll be eyeing. Talbot's the pick for me, obviously. And we'll move on. Strawweight bout. Luana Pinheiro sitting at plus 205 against Amanda Ribas sitting at minus 255. Over under 2.5 rounds. Minus 210 for the over. Plus 170 for the under. Luana Pinheiro 5-0 in her last 5, going up against Amanda Ribas, coming off a loss to Macy Barber at flyweight. She's going back down to strawweight. She's 2-3 in her last 5, but she's still coming in as a pretty hefty favorite here, which is interesting. I mean, she's obviously been fighting the better competition. Macy Barber, Viviane Araujo, Kayla Chikagi, Verna Jandiroba, Marina Rodriguez. Those are her last 5 fights. Nowhere near the competition that Pinheiro's fighting. I mean, Pinheiro's coming off the win against Michelle Watterson, and then Sam Hughes, Random Marcos. So huge discrepancy in the women that they're fighting, which is kind of why I see the line this way. But either way, I mean, she's 2-3 in her last 5, so it's not really something you're jumping at to bet minus 255. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, you look at the price, and I wanted to take Luana like right off the bat, seeing that she's a pretty big underdog. But you look at the Michelle Watterson fight, and even though she got the split decision win, like she got outstruck by Watterson, she was taken down by Watterson. So that kind of sketches me out just a little bit, because Michelle Watterson is on a 4-fight losing streak, and then had a win over Angela Hill, and then 2 more losses behind that. So it's been a while since she's really put together a string of wins. She's older now, she's slower, and that was a pretty damn close fight. Ribas, though, if I'm looking at her on the feet, she got finished by Macy Barber. She's been finished before that in the UFC as well. She doesn't take shots that well, and that's one thing Luana will do, is she hits girls with some pop. I believe she's got 2 knockdowns in her 4 UFC fights, which is good for women's MMA. You don't see that many knockdowns, and she showcases good striking every time she comes out. She actually averages a decent amount of takedowns as well. I could see her at least clinching up and using that to buy herself some time, steal a little bit of control here. I think Ribas, time might be past her a little bit. Her last fight took a ton of damage. She's jumping back in here now against a girl who hits pretty hard and is a good striker as well. I think if you're betting this is dog or pass, especially at this price in women's MMA. More often than not, the underdog is the good side to be on. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how Ribas looks in this fight against another girl who hits hard. Maybe she's a little timid. Maybe she tries to go to the grappling just a little bit. But for the pick, I'm gonna take the underdog here. Give me Pinheiro.
Yeah, fun fact for you: Luana Pinheiro will be fighting on her birthday this Saturday, November 18th. She'll be turning 31. I think that is 31. Yeah, on her birthday. So maybe she's got that going for her. But either way, she's going to have to come in here and hit Amanda Ribas with some shots that she doesn't see coming, because that's really where Amanda Ribas has struggled, is getting hit with shots that she can't see. I mean, she got TKO'd by Macy Barber, KO'd like pretty bad by Marina Rodriguez, who isn't like the heaviest handed striker. But then she gets wins against Verna Jandiroba, who also knocked her down. But I don't know. I mean, it's really a dog or pass for me. Like, Luana Pinheiro does have some good pop. It really just comes down to the fact that she blitzes girls pretty hard. Like, she'll throw in combination, and if she lands, like, it's not going to look good for Amanda Ribas, especially coming down to 115. Cutting that extra 10 pounds is probably not great for her chin. And honestly, I don't really know like what her plan is here, because she's bounced from 115. She went up to 125. Now she's coming back down. I don't know what the exact plan is for her. But either way, Luana Pinheiro is the value side in my eyes. I don't know if I'll get there from a betting perspective. I'll take her for the pick. But I don't really love either side in this one. Welterweight bout. Urus Medic is coming in at minus 235 against Johnny Parsons, sitting at plus 195. Over under 1.5 rounds. Minus 145 for the over, plus 115 for the under. Johnny Parsons putting on a absolute banger his last time out against Danny Roberts. Urus Medic coming in coming off a really nice knockout win as well. So this one, Should be a great scrap. Both men coming off big knockout wins, and the line is a little bit wide. Again, another one of those where the line is a little bit wide for my liking. Johnny Parsons, nicknamed the Sluggernaut. So it's not really a guy that you really want to go up against, especially if you're going to be betting, minus 200 or higher chalk, because he's going to go in there and slug it out. But Uros Medic moved up from lightweight to welterweight in his last time out, and he looked pretty dang good. He did get knocked down in the first round, but still battled back and got the third round knockout against Matthew Semmelsberger as an underdog. This one is a good scrap. I love it. I love this fight. Who do you like?
Yeah, stylistically, I love this fight. It's going to play out on the feet. Both guys have great kickboxing. Both guys hit hard. Johnny Parsons in his last fight with Danny Roberts was able to eat some good shots early. Danny Roberts really tried to put the pressure on him. Danny Roberts was fighting at home in London, came out, and ultimately, Johnny Parsons was able to find the finish. But what really stood out to me in that fight was Johnny Parsons, first of all, composure. When he was getting cracked, he never really made many mistakes to put himself in more danger. He didn't really try to brawl all that much, because if he ends up doing that against a guy like Uros Medic, he's probably going to get the lights put out. Like, Medic hits so damn hard. We saw it against Semmelsberger. He gets beat in the first round, comes back, and that was at altitude too. I think it speaks volumes to his cardio as well. Before I go any further, he comes back, puts it on Semmelsberger, gets the third round finish, and it showed me that first of all, he's got the good cardio, he's got the good chin, and if you can't put him out early in fights, and he's going to be able to be there in the second and third, his power translates later into fights, which I like a lot. Johnny Parsons, though, like I said, against Danny Roberts and other fights, he can eat the big shots. He's not the biggest dude in the world, though, and he's 5'9". He's facing Uros Medic, who I believe 6'1" or 2. 6'1", 71-inch reach versus 69-inch reach. This style, I got to give the edge to Uros Medic right now. If Johnny Parsons does want to win the fight or get a good jump start in the first round, I think he's got to attack the legs. Johnny Parsons has phenomenal leg kicks. He'll chop legs down early in fights, really get his opponents heavy on that front foot and take advantage of it. So if he can do that against Medic, I think it turns into an interesting fight. If Medic gets the jump on him early, I think Medic could walk away with it. My pick's going to be Uros Medic. I'm excited for this fight. I think if it goes all three, this is your fight of the night right here. Going to be fireworks. Give me the doctor here.
Yeah, I think that's the key for Johnny Parsons, because Medic has some pretty good movement on the feet. He'll bounce around southpaw, and he'll use his own kicks to the body, to the head. Johnny Parsons, if he can rip that leg kick early, we're going to have southpaw and orthodox, so it's going to have to be an inside leg kick and just really get him off his rocker early. This fight turns very interesting for the dog. But Medic, with the movement, it's in a smaller cage, which I don't love. I think Medic, though, on the feet should be able to find the chin of Johnny Parsons. Johnny Parsons, fairly durable. I mean, he was coming off that long layoff because he had like some health issues and maybe some concussion issues. But I mean, the chin looked pretty decent against Danny Roberts. So I don't know. I mean, from a betting perspective, I might just say dog or pass. But I think Medic should be able to get the dub here. I like the move up to welterweight for him, just being a little bit more solid in the cardio base. And he's got a good frame for 170 as well. I mean, 6'1", does have a 2-inch reach advantage. He uses the kicks early to the body, slow him down a little bit, and I think he should get a win here. But Johnny Parsons, live as an underdog for sure. Featherweight bout, Jonathan Pearce coming in at minus 150 against Joanderson Brito, sitting at plus 120. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 135 for the over, minus 165 for the under. JSP coming in 5-0 in his last 5, and Joanderson Brito 4-1. And he's got the height advantage there, you see, but Brito's got a slight reach advantage. Joanderson Brito, if you didn't remember, got that dub against Diego Lopez on the Contender Series back in 2021. That ages pretty dang well. After that, goes into the UFC, loses his debut against Bill Algeo in a good fight, and then since then he's won 3 straight. Not against the best competition, Weston Wilson, Lucas Alexander, who we'll talk about later on the card. And then a good win against Andre Fili, knockout in the first round. We know he's got power in the way he throws. He has some bad intentions. JSP, 5-fight win streak. Again, not against like some crazy competition. I mean, Darren Elkins still does the dang thing, but obviously not like some crazy contender type of guy. Makwan Amirkhani released. Christian Rodriguez is a bantamweight. I mean, he should be a featherweight, but he's really a bantamweight. And then Omar Morales and Kai Kamaka. He's getting it done. I don't think those wins are like crazy. He did get TKO'd against Joe Lozon back in 2019. That's his lone loss in the UFC. It's a good fight. This is probably one that people are going to be on certain sides, and a lot of people have questions about. I'm interested to hear what you got.
Yeah, I think this is a fight. First of all, whoever wins, kind of takes that next step forward in the division and really going to have to start fighting some contenders. Both guys, I think, pretty well respected. Joanderson Brito, a lot of wins on his record. If you go through and look at it, he's beaten some notable names. You said it, Diego Lopez. He's got a win over Chepe Mariscal, who's been tearing it up in the UFC now. So this guy's been fighting good competition outside the UFC, in the UFC. And he's only lost in the UFC to Bill Algeo on his debut. Like, that's a pretty tough debut because Algeo's got the style where he can strike with you. He throws a ton of volume. He can grapple with you. Super well-rounded, and loses that fight, but goes on to beat Andre Fili by knockout in the first round after that. I think for Jonathan Pearce, I think everybody watching, everybody listening knows exactly what the game plan is going to be. Shoot takedowns, land as many as you can, rack up the control time. He averages nearly 6 takedowns per fight, which is 2 per round. He's been in all 3-round fights. Significant strikes landed is over 6, a lot of ground and pound. But you don't really notice like the big ground and pound in there. Against some guys like Darren Elkins, he had him, a bloody mess. But even like I look at the Christian Rodriguez fight, he landed a lot of takedowns. But when he would, let him back up, or whenever Christian Rodriguez would get back up, rather, he did some good work and he was able to touch him up and piece him up a little bit and made the fight somewhat interesting down the stretch. Against a guy like Brito, if you can't hold him down on the feet, Brito's probably going to take advantage of those moments where it is standing. Brito's going to be the better striker here. He hits harder, he's faster, and that's what makes it interesting to me. I think if Brito even, he can fish for the neck even on some of these takedown attempts because Brito does have a good submission game in his arsenal. He's well-rounded. He's definitely going to be the more dangerous fighter here against Jonathan Pearce, which makes it interesting, and it makes me want to take a look at him here at these odds, being close. But, oh, man, it's hard to bet against a guy with the wrestling caliber of Pearce. I mean, we see it all the time in the UFC. Some of these guys, these phenomenal wrestlers, are just so hard to beat because they don't give you a second to breathe. They're either going to take you down, they're going to put you up against the cage and not give you any room to work with. And that's what I fear that happens here. But from a betting standpoint right now, I'm looking at Brito based on he's probably got more ways to win this fight.
Yeah, I like this fight a lot. Like you said, it's kind of a stepping stone. Whoever wins this moves into fighting some contenders. But the thing that scares me is Brito, 0% takedown defense. He's had 2 takedowns attempted on him against Bill Algeo. Bill Algeo got both of them. But other than that, he hasn't had to defend a takedown. A lot of that's due to him getting finishes in the first round. So, I mean, since that fight, he hasn't had a ton of octagon time. Really, in this one, the key for Joanderson Brito is to fight downhill. Like for Jonathan Pearce, he's a guy that wants to wrestle you, and he wants to be downhill. So whoever can do that, I think, has the edge in this one. If Brito can throw a lot of bombs on the feet, avoid getting taken down, and maybe get some takedowns of his own. JSP only has 59% takedown defense. Brito's got some good ground and pound of his own. So I think if Brito fights downhill, throws hard on the feet, gets Jonathan Pearce a little bit off his rocker, I think Brito's got the striking advantage in this one, especially with the power on the feet. I think he could take this one. As an underdog, I like it. Brito will be the pick for me. JSP, not super impressed with the stand-up game. Really impressed with the wrestling, but, we saw it against Christian Rodriguez. Christian Rodriguez was able to put him in some really tough positions with the submission game and even sweep him on some attempts there and get back up to his feet. So I think Brito, as the underdog's the play for me, and he'll be my pick. Bantamweight bout. Jose Johnson coming in at -210 against Chad Anheiliger, sitting at +170. Over under 2.5 rounds, -150 for the over, +120 for the under. Chad Anheiliger, 4-1 in his last 5. He's the guy that at 35 years of age got signed off the Contender Series after coming through as a big underdog against Muin Gafarov, and then goes into the UFC, gets a win against Jesse Strader, knockout in the 3rd round. And then his last time out, which was over a year ago against Anheiliger, he picks up his first loss in a very long time. This dude, Anheiliger, started his career 2-5 and then went on a 10-fight win streak and then ultimately gets his first loss in a very long time. Jose Johnson, you see the record there, 15-8. It hasn't been very clean, but he finds his way into the UFC. He's 0-1 in the UFC, made his debut on short notice against Damon Blackshear, and then he gets twisted. So these guys are, I don't want to say like journeymen, but they've been through it on the regional scene and a good amount of experience. This is a weird fight. Jose Johnson at heavy chalk is interesting. Chad Anheiliger is a pretty dang old, 36 years of age, only making his 3rd UFC fight. So I don't know where he goes from here, honestly, but it's an interesting fight. Who you got?
Yeah, I like Jose Johnson a little here for a couple reasons. Chad Anheiliger hasn't really impressed like too much. He's got the finish over Jesse Strader late in the fight, but when I look at Jose Johnson from an experience standpoint, even outside the UFC, he's fighting Mana Martinez, who's maybe not the best fighter, but he's fought in the UFC. He lost to Ronnie Lawrence, a guy who has fought in the UFC as recent as this last year, who's a great grappler. And, other than that, he's come in, he beat Mo Miller in Fury FC, gets another win, gets onto the Contender Series, gets the decision win, gets into the UFC, and they give him Damon Blackshear. It's like, that's the worst possible fight in your debut. Like, Damon Blackshear is a monster, lost by Twister, 3rd one in history. But for Jose Johnson, the one thing I really notice and what really sticks out to me is he's not really losing fights on the feet. He's losing when he gets taken down and he gets submitted, or he's fighting these wrestlers who can rack up control time. So far in the UFC, like Anheiliger doesn't have a single takedown, hasn't really attempted many, and I just don't know if he stands with a longer fighter like Jose Johnson, who's crafty, who will throw flashier stuff, who has some knockouts on his record. I mean, the guy's got 7 wins by knockout. That's his method that he wins most by. Does have submissions too. If you shoot a takedown, he'll snatch up the neck. Like, I think he's well-rounded. He's just been dealt some really, really tough fights. Not many guys are fighting that many UFC caliber fighters before they even get to the UFC. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Jose Johnson here. Haven't liked exactly what I've seen out of Anheiliger by any means. Last fight, he loses to Anheiliger, and he's going to get Jose Johnson, who's a pretty good striker here. So give me Johnson in this one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see these guys in the cage because Jose Johnson, 6 inches taller, 7 inches in reach advantage.
Exactly.
And like you said, Anheiliger hasn't even landed a takedown in the UFC. So that's where you got to take this fight if you're Anheiliger, because Jose Johnson, 33% takedown defense, that's how you beat him. But he hasn't really shown that. So, at 36 years of age, is he going to reinvent himself into a wrestler? Probably not. Jose Johnson probably has him outgunned in the striking department. Anheiliger, I mean, he's got some decent striking, but I don't know if that's going to be able to help him here. He got outstruck by Anheiliger, and Jose Johnson, I think, with the reach advantage, and he's got good striking, so I think he should probably win this one. But you never know. I mean, Chad Anheiliger could go out there and look like a D1 wrestler. I don't see it happening, but I think Jose Johnson should probably get this dub. He'll be the pick for me. And we'll move on. Bantamweight bout. Lucy Pudilova coming in at +145 against Eileen Perez, sitting at -175. Over under 2.5 rounds, -275 for the over, +220 for the under. The Eileen Perez, 3-2 in her last 5. She's coming off a big win where she set I believe it was a female record for takedowns in a fight. Lucy Pudilova coming off the robbery that we witnessed at UFC Kansas City. We believe she should have got the dub against Jocelyn Edwards. That was one where a lot of people thought she should have got the dub there. It's her second stint in the UFC. Total record in the UFC is 3-6, but in her second stint, she got a win by finish against Wu Yanan back at UFC 278, and then picks up the split decision loss against Jocelyn Edwards. And this is an interesting one because Eileen Perez maybe getting a little bit of a recency bias against her fight against Ashley Evans Smith, who is really bad. Like Ashley Evans Smith is pretty dang bad. So, I mean, you kind of expected Eileen Perez to win that fight, but she was 0-1 in the UFC at that point. It wasn't really like we saw anything crazy from her going into that fight, but she proved like, she's levels above Ashley Evans Smith in that fight. But does that really mean anything? We don't know. I mean, this one will probably tell us a little bit more about Eileen Perez. She's coming in as a favorite, and it's not like a slight favorite by any means. I think the line is growing towards her way as well. So Lucy Pudilova got a lot of experience. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, it's tough. Like I want to take Lucy Pudilova here as a buy low spot, but outside of the Wu Yanan fight, she took 4 losses in a row, albeit it was to Justine Kish, Antonina Shevchenko, Liz Carmouche, and Irene Aldana. So she's fighting higher level girls in women's MMA. But I look at the side of Eileen Perez. Kind of had a little hype behind her on the whatever, I forget what is it, Samurai Fight House in Argentina, where she was fighting. Had some wins, had some knockouts. She's really powerful. She's strong. She showed it in the fight against Ashley Evans Smith with 10 takedowns. But like you said, Ashley Evans Smith is not a good fighter. She hadn't fought in 3 or 4 years, I believe, before that fight. Yeah. Like she took it out of nowhere, wasn't prepared, it didn't look like it at all. And, Eileen Perez gets the win. On the other side, Lucy Pudilova in Kansas City gets the robbery loss that she probably did not deserve. I thought she fought well. She got takedowns when she needed to. She hung with Jocelyn Edwards on the feet when she needed to. Overall, gets the loss. It's a loss on her record. That's why I say it could be the buy low spot on her here. I think she's going to be motivated coming off that loss. You could tell, like, she walked right by you and I, just feet away from us as she left the octagon. She looked heartbroken. She looked, upset, rightfully so. Maybe it burns a fire under her ass and she comes out here and has a good performance. I think as this fight goes on, I could see Eileen Perez starting to slow down. She's younger still, not much UFC experience, not much high-level experience, and you got to step in there with a girl in Lucy Pudilova who has fought some really damn good female fighters in the last couple of years. So, I'm just going to stick with Lucy Pudilova. I think she can get the win here. I think if Eileen Perez can't get the takedowns, she might get a little tired. I think Lucy Pudilova can get Eileen Perez down as the fights go on. But, if there's a split decision bet out there on the table, I wouldn't mind hammering it because I think this could be a close fight as well. But give me Lucy Pudilova. Give me the experience and give me the buy low spot here on her.
Yeah, I hate betting women's chalk, especially at this level, because it's not like the highest level. But I don't know. I think Eileen Perez has a little bit more that she could, improve on based on, the age and the lack of experience. I think within every fight that she goes into, I think she probably improves. I believe she's training down at the Goat Shed, and it looks like she's doing some pretty good work there. Really, just what I see in this fight is Lucy Pudilova doesn't land a lot of, significant strikes. She just really doesn't. And on the feet, I mean, that's really why she lost the fight against Jocelyn Edwards. She just got outstruck in some areas, and they scored it for her based on damage, I guess. And before, I guess in her first UFC stint, like, she's losing to girls, and it's better competition, but I mean, she's still losing. She goes into octagon, and she gets some wins, but it's not like she's fighting world beaters over there. So I don't know. I think Eileen Perez goes in here and she's kind of a junkyard dog too. I mean, she looks tough in there. She looks mean. I'm going to go with Eileen Perez. I think she throws in combination on the feet and just makes it awkward for Lucy Pudilova. And the wrestling, I think she's got the advantage in the wrestling. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's women's MMA. This is a really greasy fight. But Eileen Perez will be the pick for me. Heavyweight bout. Mick Parkin coming in at -330 against Kyle Machado, sitting at +240. No over-under out yet for this one. Both men 5-0 in their last 5. Mick Parkin still undefeated. And Machado making his UFC debut coming off the Contender Series. in a fight that was, just really gross to watch. I don't know how he gets a UFC contract. Well, I do know why he gets a UFC contract, because the UFC needs heavyweights. And even though that performance was just atrocious, I mean, the guy that he fought, Kevin Zaflarski, was just a punching bag the entire fight. It wasn't really anything crazy to watch. The thing on Mick Parkin's side, the fight that he's coming off of, his opponent was a punching bag as well. Fought Jamal Pogues in his UFC debut. Pogues doesn't do much. I mean, it was a heavyweight decision where neither guy was really in trouble. It looked like a sparring match. And that's really what Kyle Machado's last fight looked like too. So this is greasy heavyweights at a very low level. And you're getting a wide line on Mick Parkin. I don't know if I could lay that chalk on Mick Parkin. And he looks like a little bit of the better fighter at this point, but that's a wide line that I don't think I could get behind. What are you thinking?
Yeah, for Mick Parkin, I haven't been impressed. Like you said, the fight against Jamal Pogues is not that good of a heavyweight. He's big, he's got a good jab, and that's about it. Mick Parkin kind of did what he had to get that win, though. But he has good forward pressure. It seems like he's the style where, if he gets in space, he can strike a little bit. But a lot of his game plan seems to be use the striking to get to the clinch, put him against the cage, and just kind of slow down his opponent. And it makes it really, really boring. With Kyle, this guy's not a big heavyweight. I forget what he weighed in on the Contender Series, but I want to say it was between 230, 240. I think he's the more athletic guy here than Parkin. I think I want to say like Kyle Machado. I read or heard somebody talking about on a podcast that he talked about moving down to light heavyweight potentially. Like it shows that he's not carrying a bunch of extra fat like some of these other heavyweights are. So I give the athletic edge to Machado here. He has good kicks. He has shown good wrestling on the regional scene at least, and jiu-jitsu as well. He has some submissions on his record coming by armbar, stuff you don't really see much of at the heavyweight level. But what scares me is like we hear about all this stuff. You watch it on the regional scene, and he comes into the Contender Series, and you don't really see much of it at all. Like it was such a boring fight, like you said. Kind of makes me think once he gets to the UFC level and he's fighting guys who are better than the regional scene guys, maybe we're not going to see it then either. And if he can't get some of that stuff going, he's just going to get beat. If he puts it all together, though, and he does come out aggressive, I could see him making this fight close. I hate the price on Mick Parkin at minus 350. Both guys have the same amount of professional fights. It's not like there's a big experience edge for Mick Parkin here. He's obviously probably fought a little bit better competition, being that he's been in the UFC and Contender Series just a few fights longer than Machado. I'm tempted to take a shot on the dog, though, because it's heavyweight MMA. Anything can happen. I haven't really loved what I've seen out of Mick Parkin. I haven't seen the big power to put guys out by any means. Whereas Machado, he at least has 4 wins by KO, 2 by submission, and his other fights went to decision. But I'm going to take a shot on Kyle Machado here. I like the build better. I like the athleticism. I think if he just puts it all together, B's a little more aggressive in this fight than he was in the Contender Series. Fights to win and not to just get a safe win. I think he could pull it off and shock some people. But just not a big Mick Parkin guy yet.
Yeah, I'm not a big guy on either.
Guys,
but Kyle Machado, it says he weighed in at 256 his last fight, but before that, I mean, he's weighing in at 249, 237. I do think he's probably got a little bit more of a better gas tank, maybe a little bit more athletic. Mick Parkin, definitely a heavyweight. Training partners with Tom Aspinall.
Yeah.
He is undefeated. I just haven't really loved what I've seen from him either. Like against Jamal Pogues, Jamal Pogues doesn't offer much as far as a danger on the feet. And then Mick Parkin was just kind of out there sparring with him. So I don't know. I'm gonna take Mick Parkin for the pick, but no chance I'm laying that juice on him. Maybe I'll get to Machado as an underdog and just take a shot on him because it's low level heavyweights. And I mean, with these guys, it's like should be a lot closer, I think. Mick Parkin will be the pick for me, but down the road might get to Machado. Featherweight bout, Lucas Alexander coming in at minus 360 against Jekka Saragih, sitting at plus 260. No over-under out for this one either. Both men 28 years of age. You see the height and reach advantage there for Lucas Alexander. Jekka Saragih was fighting at a lightweight in the road to the UFC tournament, goes down to featherweight, which I think suits him a little bit more, or suits him better here. Lucas Alexander, 4-1 in his last 5, coming off a win against Steve Peterson. That was Steve Peterson's retirement fight. But before that, took a fight against Joanderson Brito to get into the UFC, gets choked out in the first round. What we saw again, or by him against Steven Peterson, I mean, he's got some pretty good striking. I mean, the kicks are really where he shines. He fights behind his kicks a lot. Saragih also fights behind the kicks a lot too. This is probably going to be a fight that plays out on the feet. We saw in Saragih's fight against Anheiliger, gets taken down. He doesn't know what the hell to do. So I don't know. Maybe Lucas Alexander mixes that in here. I don't really expect that from him. Probably a fight that plays out on the feet. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I think it plays out on the feet as well. And, I give the edge to Lucas Alexander at this point. Saragih gets finished by Jubilee, who we saw kind of got fraud checked against Mike Breeden in his last fight, which is a little worrisome. Like, Jekka looks good right out of the gate because he's explosive. He's got good striking and he's got some power. But as the fight goes on, he starts to get hit a lot. His hands come down. He was taking some big shots against Jubilee that ultimately led to the finish. And the one thing too is you look at him out there, he's not the biggest guy in the world for this division. Lucas Alexander, a little bit taller, longer. I think his striking is just a little, I don't even want to say more technical. It's hard to explain. I think Alexander's striking is going to be more efficient here. Jekka, he's always loading up and looking for the big shots. And if it doesn't come, he's getting hit in return. He's getting pieced up and people are putting volume on him. Lucas Alexander too. You look at his record, he's got 3 losses, and they all come by submission. I don't see Jekka taking Lucas Alexander down and having success in that department. Saragih's got 4 submissions on his record, but you look at it, who it's against, it's not really the highest level of guys. I feel like a lot of these fighters in these divisions that aren't heavyweight, light heavyweight, you'll see them get some rear naked chokes, and you'll see them get some guillotines just because they're fighting competition who don't know how to defend. It's not so much that they're these, savage jiu-jitsu players by any means. So, yeah, give me Lucas Alexander. I think he's going to be the more composed fighter here. Like I said, I think his volume will be better. And once Jekka, gets through that first couple minutes of all of his volume and his power shots, I think the hands come down a little bit and he starts getting pieced up. So give me Alexander.
Yeah, I think he laid it out pretty perfect. Jekka Saragih's going to load up on some shots. If he hits it, he's got a chance, but I don't think he's going to hit it in this one. I think Alexander keeps him at kicking range, pieces him up. He's training at a good camp, Fusion XL, and I think he's going to continue getting better there. Jekka Saragih, I don't think he's UFC level whatsoever. I think Alexander at least has some promise in the UFC as far as his striking abilities. Obviously, the submission defense is something that he needs to take care of, but Saragih's not going to present much danger there. So I think Lucas Alexander rolls through this one and gets a dub. But Saragih, if he can make it dirty and just get Lucas Alexander off his game, he's got a chance. I just don't see it happening. So Alexander would be the pick for me. Lightweight bout, Trey Ogden coming in at plus 105 against Nicholas Motta, sitting at minus 135. No over-under out for this one either. 3-2 in their last 5 for both men. 33 years of age for Trey Ogden, 30 years of age for Nicholas Motta. And Ogden will have a slight reach and height advantage. Trey Ogden seems to be the man, the coach, transitioning towards the coaching role more so than the fighting role. His UFC career hasn't been anything crazy. He is 1-2 in his UFC career. He's lost to Jordan Leavitt and a loss to Ignacio Bahamondes. And as you said earlier, got that win against Daniel Zellhuber, which was quite the shock because he came in there as a plus 310 favorite, got it done. And then his last time out against Bahamondes, a lot of people were looking at that one as like Bahamondes, pretty similar type of guy to Daniel Zellhuber, but Zellhuber put it on him. Pretty easy win for Bahamondes in that one against Trey Ogden. Ogden coming in against Nicholas Motta. Nicholas Motta hasn't had a great UFC career either, 1-2. And he's been knocked out a couple times. Manuel Torres' last time out, really nasty elbow, put him out pretty bad. And I believe he had some concussion issues that they had to address because they wanted to get this fight booked earlier, but they had to push it off till now. But Nicholas Motta, I think both guys are probably whoever wins this might stay in the UFC. Even both guys might get cut. Who knows? I don't think either guy has some bright future in the UFC. Trey Ogden moving towards the coaching role at Marathon MMA. I think that's probably the route that he'll go if he loses this one. But who you got in this one? It's another greasy one, but at least it's a closer line. Who you got?
It really is greasy. I'm gonna lean Trey Ogden at slight plus money. The Zellhuber fight, I keep going back to it. Like, Trey Ogden is a good wrestler, but he doesn't always use it, especially like when he should be. He's kind of, he stayed on the feet the whole time with Zellhuber. Besides, he landed one takedown, but he wasn't spamming takedowns. I don't know if he was worried about getting tired or gassing out, but he was able to stay and outland Daniel Zellhuber and get the unanimous decision. Since then, Daniel Zellhuber has gone on to look pretty damn sharp, and even before that fight, he looked pretty damn sharp. I think it was a big shock, and Ogden was a big underdog there. So it shows that he has the ability to stay on the feet with some higher level strikers. I don't necessarily think Nicholas Motta is a high level striker. I just think he's got some power. He swings hard. You watch him fight. He's not real active. His head's kind of on the center line. He's not moving much, but he does possess power. I will say that. You've seen him get some KOs. At the UFC level, he's got the knockout over Cameron Van Camp, and that's his only win inside the UFC. And Cameron Van Camp, I'm just going to be straight up, was pretty damn awful, especially on the feet. He gets hit, he gets knocked out. I'm pretty sure he was just in bare knuckle and got knocked out there as well. So that's your only win. You got absolutely flatlined by Manuel Torres, and you got knocked out by Jim Miller too. Like, it's kind of been a rough go of it so far in the UFC for you. That's the main reason I take Trey Ogden here. Trey Ogden's at least shown he can hang in there with good strikers. He's pretty tough too. I mean, he hung in there with Bahamondes, who landed 100 significant strikes against him, who knocks a lot of people out, who has great kicks, and he was able to survive and didn't get put out there. So I don't know, man. I'm thinking Trey Ogden. I think he's got the wrestling to fall back on too here against him. I think Motta's a little smaller for this division as well. He's going to be a couple inches shorter. It's not like he's going to have a big reach advantage where he's going to be able to, fight really well from the outside against Ogden. Ogden does move decently with his foot, like with his footwork at least. He's not the best head movement by any means. He will get hit a little bit, but against Motta, who's not a big volume puncher, who's not an insane kickboxer or boxer by any means, if you avoid the power, I think he's going to have some success. He's going to make it close like these odds show. And overall, I'll give him the wrestling edge too, which is going to make me take him here at slightly plus money.
Yeah, it's a weird one because Motta, he's just going to wing bombs really early. And for Trey Ogden, he's never been knocked out. But on the flip side, he's literally 0 wins by KO/TKO. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he really offers much on the feet that Motta's got to be, afraid of. So I don't know if that makes Motta more confident in the fact that he could wing bombs. But then that also opens up the takedown aspect for Trey Ogden, which I think is probably the smartest way to go about this for him, is to get the fight to the ground. He's got a number of wins by submission, 11 to be exact. He's only been finished by submission. Nicholas Motta has been knocked out a few times, 4 to be exact, and he's been submitted once. So this is just a greasy fight. I'd probably lean Trey Ogden too, just based on, I don't know, maybe the more technicalities of it. Nicholas Motta definitely live for a KO, but we've never seen Trey Ogden KO'd. So I think Trey Ogden should be able to avoid it, probably clinch him up, maybe even use the footwork. And, he put on a good performance against Zellhuber. If he can do that here against Motta, I think he should cruise to a victory, but just a real greasy one. I wouldn't be, too invested either side, but for the pick, I'd go with Trey Ogden.
Don't forget, Trey Ogden, 16 wins, 13 by submission. So if he does get it to the ground, that's live as well. I've seen Nicholas Motta lose by submission as well. Sorry, 11 submission wins, but yeah.
Flyweight bout, Rafael Estevam coming in at -135 against Charles Johnson, sitting at +105. No over-under out for that one either. The undefeated Estevam coming against Charles Johnson. He's 32 years of age, 2-3 in his last 5. The man that they call Energy, and coming in as a slight dog. The man's been taking a lot of fights. Seems like he's been out for a while, though. Seems like, towards the beginning of the year, he was fighting like almost every month. He's taking a little bit of time off, coming in here against Estevam as an underdog. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, maybe the time off will be what he needed because I've always thought of Charles Johnson as a good fighter. Like he doesn't have the best record by any means, but every time he's getting ready to walk out or I'm betting against him, I'm always nervous because he does have a decently well-rounded game. He's a good boxer. He's got a little bit of wrestling and grappling, but against guys who do have good takedowns, like a Cody Durden who landed 11 against him, Ode Osborne landed 3 against him. He seems to struggle. Like that's his kryptonite. And Estevam averages quite a few takedowns as well. We saw him on the Contender Series come out and land some. We've seen him win a lot of fights by submission. We've seen him win fights by just getting the takedowns, landing ground and pound, beating guys up on the ground for 3 or 5 rounds. So it makes me worried for Charles Johnson in that aspect. Charles Johnson, too, has seemed to slow down in a couple of his last fights. I understand the Cody Durden fight. He slowed down. He's getting taken down 11 times. Most guys would tire out. But against Ode Osborne, he had chances to go out there and really separate himself, and he just didn't do it. He could have won that fight, in my opinion. He outlanded him, but towards the end of the fight, he was a little more tired than Ode. And, ultimately, I think the body language and just those last few rounds kind of swayed the judges, and he takes the L. His wins, Jimmy Flick, Zhalgas Zhumagulov, both guys who aren't really highly regarded in that division in the UFC anymore. At least Zhalgas is gone. And for Estevam, man, 11-0, you got all the momentum in the world. You're really well-rounded. I know this is UFC debut. You're getting a guy who's probably a vet by this point. Going to be tough, especially in the early going. But if he can just stay in his game plan and not have that adrenaline dump and not let this big stage get to him, stay composed, I think Charles Johnson will start to give him the fight. I think Charles will get tired. I think Estevam is a savage. I think he should get this win.
Yeah, Estevam hasn't fought since his Contender Series fight back in September of 2022. He's had a couple canceled fights, one against Carlos Candelario, one against Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Both of those were this year. Hopefully he gets to this one against Charles Johnson. But yeah, like you said, Charles Johnson, takedown defense is a liability. I mean, he'll get taken down, but he'll get back up. But, that's just never a good look if you're getting taken down, 10 plus times in a fight against Cody Durden, 11 times, 12 times by Mikhaev. Estevam, he just fights super aggressive, and Charles Johnson, kind of a guy that fights off the back foot a little bit. So I don't think that really works out well for Charles Johnson. If Estevam can get going downhill, Charles Johnson going to be kind of defensive for a lot of the fight. I don't think that works out well. And honestly, you just look at the wins for Charles Johnson in the UFC. Jimmy Flick, Zhalgas Zhumagulov, both guys that are. I don't think Jimmy Flick's in the UFC anymore. If he is, he probably shouldn't be. But Zhalgas Zhumagulov's not. And other than that, they're all losses. So I think Estevam, undefeated, is coming in with some momentum. And I just think he's got him outgunned in most of these aspects. I mean, if Charles Johnson, it seems like he has good cardio, but at times we just haven't seen it. A lot of times he'll fade, but in theory, it looks like he has good cardio. We've seen it a lot of times where he does. Sometimes he doesn't. So Estevam probably going to come out pretty aggressive, put it on him early. And probably if he can wear out Johnson early, I don't think Johnson's going to be able to come back and turn it on. So I think Estevam would be the pick for me. And Charles Johnson, he's never been finished. So, Estevam is kind of a finisher. He does have 4 wins by decision, but other than that, he's getting guys out of there. So it's an interesting fight. Flyweights, there's a lot of, variabilities, a lot of weird stuff that can happen, but I think Estevam will be the pick for me. And I don't hate the line, honestly. I don't hate it too much, so I'll take him. And those are the picks. We got 13 fights broken down for you. There's a replacement for Cesar Almeida against Christian Leroy Duncan. We'll get that to you, but at the moment there is not. Once again, if you want the bets, jump in the premium membership. Link is in the description for that. You can follow us at the Double Leg to stay up to date on everything. At HI Picks on the medias for me. You can get some free plays there. I'll give out there on Underdog Fantasy and Parlay Play. Where can they find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
All right, going into UFC Vegas 82 this weekend. Good luck to everybody. Hope you make some money. Hope you make some good picks. Till next time, we'll be recapping UFC Vegas 82. The Double Leg here, signing up.